Yeah. Okay, recording is started. Welcome. Let me see. Welcome to today's tutorial. This is part two, right? So let's continue with the question paper. I, I hope it's this is not a serious cold. I think I caught flu in. So we have allocate. Yeah, we have the allocate function. And yeah, we had the display to display our game. We had the generand int, which generates a random integer. So yeah, now we need to do, I think we're going to the movement. Yeah, with the movement of the player, right? There's quite a lot to explain there. Excuse me.
Say, didn't you forget to share the screen? Oh,
Oh, my bad. No one's telling me anything, man. Yeah, my bad for that. I wasn't aware that I wasn't sharing my screen. Yeah. Um, so yeah, all this time I thought I was sharing. I thought you could see what I'm looking at. So this is the code, right? This is where we left off. We had implemented the generand int function, which generates a random integer. Then we had the display world, which displays our world. And remember, we said we use const int. Why? Because inside of this function, we are not allowed to change the rows, right? So there's a constant. If you try changing, I think it should give you an error. Let me build. Yeah, you see that gives you an error. So that's why we put the const there, because our game mode doesn't change. Does the size of your room change after, or the size of your house, does it change after it has been created? Nope. So it's the same thing. You can't change the size of the house. If the house has 2 bedrooms, it only has 2 bedrooms. It doesn't miraculously have a third one unless you decide to extend the house. So it's the same thing here. Our game mode is always going to be fixed. We can't change the size. So that's why I'm going to pass them as const because they are constant. Remember the word const, right? It comes from the word constant, meaning it's constant. It doesn't change. It's fixed. Just like constants in maths, right? Like pi. Pi is a number that's fixed. We call that a constant. The speed of light, that's a constant number, physics. So that's what we call constants. It's numbers that will never change. So yeah, we have that. Also here, the thing is I tend to let me think about it. Let me just give me a sec. Yeah. I was also supposed to use const here. Yeah, the thing is sometimes when I be having my sessions, I'm kinda it's like the few hours before I had rolled the joint. So sometimes I tend to forget, hey, this day, say I must go, I must relax, hey, because now it's kind of messing up with my memory. Tend to forget little things. So we have this const right here. That's fine. So const, you don't have to do this, right? It's not, it's not like a program won't work. But then the reason why we do that is so that when you're writing code, maybe you're writing semester test two and you're panicking. By mistake, you change your role, you try to change roles to something else. Obviously, that's going to ruin the output. So const, right, it's going to prevent you from doing this. It'll show you an error. So that you don't try to change the size. So for the new students who are joining us today, remember I sent you videos, right? So those videos you'll use them to catch up. So we already did there's already 2 videos before this session. So you're gonna have to watch those after this. So we're doing the movement, right? We want to move the player. So let's see. Remember, we have our movements here. These are our constants. I know that Dr. Stungu taught you this week about enums. I don't want to confuse you guys. Just trust me with the way I'm teaching you guys that there's a reason why I'm teaching it this way. So the first game that we're gonna make, it's not gonna involve record structures or enums. It's gonna just be basic, like basic constants, basic types that you're familiar with. Then the next paper that we do, it'll be based on everything. We're gonna add everything that you've been taught, like enums, record structures, all those things. We're gonna add them. For now, we start with basic. You need to start somewhere. That's why when a child is born, they start by crawling before. Imagine the child started speaking immediately when they came out of the mother's womb. That would be weird, right? So there's a lot of steps being skipped there. So we start somewhere. We start by crawling before before we get to jogging or running. We need to start by crawling. So start with the basics. So yeah, that's the only thing I need to explain. But then remember that our movements, right? Remember our movements is we're gonna use integers. We're gonna or constants. We're gonna represent them as constants. So say if it's move up, it's the constant 0. This is why do we do this? Is so that it makes the application easy to read, right? So when you look, even for someone who doesn't know, who doesn't do computer science, when they read our code, they can know, oh, move up. That's for moving up. You see, it's easier. You see that when you call our function to move instead of our main, the CPP, that it's going to work and it's going to take in one of those constants. You see, that's why I'm passing constant here because it expects you to pass a constant, which can be any of these constants, right? So that's why that parameter is like that. Then now I'm going to do something, right? So before we continue, let's discuss movement. How does movement work? Yeah, lucky enough for you, I don't have a session with ComSci 2A students, right? So that means that today we can have a 2 hour session or up to 3 hours maximum. So we need to cover as much as we can today because we have the time. And long weekend is coming. Apparently, I don't know. You guys would confirm with me. If there is gonna be long weekend, that's when we're gonna have to have 2 sessions per day until you guys open again. I don't know when, Monday or whatever. Or yeah, Monday. I don't know when you guys are closing. So yeah, we need to work very hard so that when you do at least, I don't know, 5, maybe let's say maximum 5 past papers, you start to see what we call a pattern. Remember in high school, series and sequences, right? I agree you'd repeat and repeat steps until you see a pattern. Then you come up with the formula, then you know, oh, so this thing, it actually doesn't change. It's always the same. It's 2D, it's an array, it's pointers, it's type def, it's this, it's const. If I want to use enum, I can use enum. You start to see a pattern, you get a revelations, right? Yeah, since I want to discuss movement, right, I need to go back here, right? So I'm gonna go back here. I need to replace all of these numbers with their symbols, right? Remember, we said this 0 is represented by the symbol dot. So everywhere where there's a 0, I must replace that 0 with a dot because that represents my, like, it's an empty space. Empty space. By empty space, right? What do we mean by that? We mean that it's not occupied. It's like, for example, yeah, trust me, I wish I had better examples, but I tend to come up with stupid examples, but you get the point. It's like going when you're using a public toilet, right, at the mall. I get it, that toilet can either be empty or it's occupied. So this dot represents that these toilets that are not occupied. There's nothing there. That's why we use a dot to represent that. So that's basically what I mean by not occupied. Means that there's nothing there. Even though you see the dot, that dot tells the user that, listen, there's nothing there. Basically, there's no star, there's no battery, there's no operator, there's no wire, there's nothing there. Then if it's a 2, remember we said that if you're using a 2, because that's how I planned my game, right? You can plan it vice versa. You can say S is 4 and then O is 1. It's up to you. It's your preg, right? It's your solution. This part here, you're allowed to choose whatever numbers you want. But make sure that each of these numbers, their differences is what is 1. You did sequences and series, right, in high school. So from 0 to 1, the difference is 1. From 1 to 2, the difference is 1. From 2 to 3, difference is 1. 3 to 4, difference is 1. So all of them, make sure it's a difference of 1. Then if it's a one, I should replace that one with the symbol S. Yeah, I'm gonna show you how easy this thing is if you break it down and really understand it. Where there's a two, I'm gonna put a battery because the two represents a battery. Where there's a three, that's the operator. Where there's a four, that's the Y. So there's my grid, right? Or there's my game. So this will be my game over here. Let me move it down. And then this will be, remember C++, we talked about arrays, right? We had a session on that. This is a 2D array and position started position 0. So this will be row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3. And then this will be column 0, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5. So if in order to find, for me to find the coordinates of this is row 0, column 5. That's the coordinates of this. So I want to teach you how to move something. That's the agree our main goal is to talk about movement. Let me show you how easy movement can be. So I'm gonna leave it like this so that you can picture it, right? So there's my grid, there's my game. Let's say I want to move. Remember the operator is one that's moving. Let's start with something. Let's write them one by one, right? Let me show you one by one. So this is by one by one, I mean the direction of or in which direction the player moves. So let's start by moving up. How do you move up? Basically, it moves from its current position to a position that's up. I want you to notice something, right? Before we moved, I'm always going to have a before and after. We keep track of what coordinates. Remember, think of this as a Cartesian plane. The rows is the x-axis. The columns is the y-axis. Think of it exactly like that. Because it's a coordinate system. It's a 2D world, just like a Cartesian plane. So before, remember in the Cartesian plane, again we say x, y to represent the coordinates. Now we're gonna say R, C. Why R, C? Because R stands for row, C stands for column. We're gonna write it in that format. So let me do this. Right, so let me do this so that you know what it means when I put it in coordinate form. That the first coordinate represents my row, the second coordinate represents my column. So let's do that. So the first, let's look at the position. Which index is it? Which row is this operator in? Row 3. So that means it's row 3, and then a column. Which column? Column 2. Then it'll be column 2. What about after movement? Let's remember we're trying to move up. So after movement, you see that it's from 0. It needs to move from 0 to here. So this one means from 3, I mean 3 to. Oh, okay, before we do that, yeah, let me show you something. Yeah, this is very, I need to explain it. I need to be very patient and take my time. Because if you don't understand it, you won't know why the code is written the way it's written, and you're gonna cram. Cramming results in your code crashing. So don't do that. So it's here, right? It's at row 0, and we're trying to move it here. So if you're trying to move it here, what is the coordinate of there? The coordinate of there is row 2, column 2. Do you notice something? The row decreased from 3 to 2, meaning it decreased by 1, but the column remained the same. So that's something that's the formula, right? For moving up. So this will be move up, right? Move up, we've seen. I don't have to make a lot of examples. Why? Because it's your homework. You have to do the diagram again. Try to do the examples on yourself because this is just maths. You're trying to prove that that formula holds true. Which formula? The formula that if you want to move up, you take the current row, right? Then you subtract 1 from it. But then the column remains the same column. So this will be the formula for moving up. So I'm gonna copy this and then put it here. That's the formula for moving up. So I'm not since I understand formula moving up or moving, right? That's basically how you move. You can draw the diagram, a small game, and then try to move the players and see how you can come up with the code. Let's see something, right? Remember, each operator has a coordinate in the array, right? So each symbol, I mean each game character. For example, the O character or the O char or the operator is at a specific coordinate, which is 3, 2, right? That's the coordinate that the operator is at. We need to move it to 2. Update. Um, Sorry about that, my Wi-Fi. I don't know what's going on. Oh, yeah, it's back now. That was a weird thingy. So as I was saying, the operator needs to move from this row to this row. But the column, if you see the column, right, you see the column, it's still remaining the same, column 2. So that means we don't do any changes to our column. That's how you move up. So we need to understand something, right? We need to understand the coordinates of where I currently am, right? I can call them, yeah, let me do that. Let me say current x coordinate, something like that. I can create a variable, right, and say current x coordinate, right, which represents my current x coordinate. But then we don't have to, let me see, current x coordinate. Yeah, I shouldn't. I want to come up with a shorter name. That's what I'm thinking about. But then I'm just gonna call it current row, right? Which represents the current position of my game symbol. And then current row is the same thing, the current column of this of the symbol or the game or character that I want to move. In this case, let's just say it's O. So that means current row would store, because remember before it said there's row 3. So current row would store 3. And then current call would store 2. Then to find the coordinates of this, we can store because we see the thing about gaming, right? When you're making the game, we need to keep track of the both coordinates. The coordinate of where I currently am, right? And the coordinate, and then I also need to declare variables to store the coordinate, to store the new coordinates of where I want to move to. So where you want to move to, we call that the destination. For example, if you during this long weekend, you call your parents, right? To say, hey mom, I wanna come back home. Then they send you money for the bus. Then you go book a bus, whatever. Then you go home, right? So in that when you're in the bus and you're going home, where you stop, which is home, that's what we call a destination. For people, I know we don't all come from the same background. English is not our mother's tongue. So yeah, so that's why I have to sometimes over explain. So this will be the destination. This is where you want to go to. This is where you currently are. So I need to create 4 variables. So I need to have current row, current call, and then I need to have we usually call it D row, right? By why D row? Because it's the destination row, right? But then it's fine. I'll write it in full just for this code, right? For this question paper. But then usually write it as D row D call and then destination call, right? So this is the 4 variables that will keep track of our positions. So in order for us to move to those positions, right, we need to find this. We need to find the location of this character, right? This needs to be found. To be honest, to be honest, a record structure would make things life easy. Like it'll make the code way easier, but it's fine. We will we'll use a different technique. So that's the current coordinates, right? So these 2 variables represents where the character O is currently at. Then this 2 represents where it wants to go. So how do we find its destination? Remember the formula here. This is the formula. You take the current row, you subtract 1. That's how you find the row for the destination. Then the column actually remains the same. So in terms of code, how would I write that? Ignore these two parts, right? We're gonna have to initialize this by finding that game character. So ignore that part for now. Then we're gonna say is equals to my current row minus one. That's basically why I was showing you that formula there. So that when you see it in code, you understand why that's the case. And then you can say is equals to current call. Remember, they said column, I said that column shouldn't change because of the formula. So the destination column, I just initialize it back to the current column because it didn't change basically, it remains the same. So this is how we're going to do the movements. How we're going to find the destination row and the destination column. Then we go into our 2D array. Remember, we need to go into our 2D array and update by basically changing the characters. How do you update? What do I mean? It means replace this or basically move this, shift it to go to the top. So how do you shift that? Remember, we need to understand the terminology. This is my current position. This is the destination. So that means I need to have the coordinates for my destination and the coordinates of where I currently am, of which we have, right? That's why we created 4 variables. Remember, I said don't worry about this. I'll have to show it to you in code to know how we to find those coordinates. We need to create a function that finds a character in our game. So this is the current, this is destination. So in order for me to move all day, that means I need to change. Look at what I'm doing right now. I'm replacing that dot with a O, right? In my destination. So I need to go to my destination. So how do you do that? What I just finished doing right now. How do you do that in code? You simply put in your array name, right? Square bracket, you pass in the row, which is which row to go to. And then you close the square bracket. Then you open a second bracket, then you close square bracket, then you close it. So there's 2 square brackets. Remember the first square brackets in my code, it represents the row. The second square bracket represents the column. So I need to specify which column, which row, and which column. Then I need to say is equals to so that I update or I change that game character that's there. But remember, we talked about the array. The array is actually under the hood an array of integers. We simply convert those integers into symbols via this game characters array. Remember, we have these characters. But then the array itself, if you check here, remember here at the top, or to the array, it's an array of integers. So that means if I'm actually changing the array, I need to use what? These constants. So I need to use those constants to change the array. So let's remember those constants. So I need to go to my destination row and my destination column. So that's why I'm taking my time explaining it piece by piece because there's a lot involved in this thing. And you need to really understand so that you don't have code that doesn't run when you're writing. So there's the array name. I pass in which destination row, which destination column. Why am I doing that? Because that's how I showed you that you need to replace what's at that destination with the symbol that you want to move. Well, in this case, I want to move what? Operator. So that means I need to initialize the new destination to have the operator symbol. So I'm going to initialize it to the operator. Why operator? Because in my code, that's the constant. I've named it operator. Then we're not done. Okay, this is the part for movement, right? Movement. Basically, I'm moving the player. Here is the part for finding the locations. Then we redo the same process at the top. Basically, we're not done yet. Let me show you why we need the second part. Look at what happens when I look at. Let me show you. Let me. I want you to see the pattern here. Remember, this was a dot, right? And then I replaced it to an O, an operator. Basically, I'm trying to move this day. But do you notice that in the previous location, basically now O is moved. We need to update the previous location to be an empty space. Or else, why should we do that? If we ignore that, what's going to happen? It's going to leave it like this. Now we have two. It's like the game thinks we have 2 operators, of which we don't. Let's say you try to move again from the new position, which is here, to this destination. That would mean that I would have to change this to an O. You see the problem? I started having a lot of O's, of which I shouldn't have them because there's only one O. There's one operate. That's why we always need to change our previous location back to an empty space because why? It's no longer occupied. That's why we need to update the previous location. So let me go back up here. So I've moved here. Now I need to change my previous location, which is this one, back to a unoccupied space by basically putting it, changing it to empty space, which is that dot. So I need to do that in my code. How do I do that in code? Go here, but now remember the location is different. It's no longer destination because destination should store in the operator because that's where we are going. That's our destination. The current, remember this is where the O symbol was currently at. So its coordinates, its current row and current column. So I need to use current row and current column. So here I'm going to say current row and current column. Not an operator, we need to initialize it to an empty space. So this part over here, right, that I've highlighted is the part that goes to the previous location or the current location, right, which had an O. Remember, before we moved, we had an O. So this was our current. It goes to that current location, which is the current row and current column, initialize it to an empty space. Basically, essentially moving this current. You see that it is moved. The thing is about when you're running it with CMD, right? It's gonna update it so fast that you won't see, but it's actually doing it in slow motion. This is how it would look. So now we know how to update. So I don't have to actually talk. I don't have to actually explain quite a lot. For example, how to move diagonally. Let's make it. Let's look at. Let me show you how easy it is. We know how to move up. We only decrease the row. That's how we find the destination. The column remains the same. What if I want to move up and right, which is diagonally, which is in this point here? How do I move there? Look at what changes. I moved from this column to this column. Do you notice something? It was at column 2, right? Remember, this is at column 2. Now it's at column 3. That means it increased by 1. I increased the column by 1. So let's understand that formula, right? I increased the column by 1. So let me write it down. Move up and left. And right, man, not left. I increased the column by 1. So I'm going to write it in coordinate form. So I know the column that I need to increase it by 1. By column is the current column because we look at the current position of that game current. Then here, what's the row? Look at the row. It was a 2, row 2, and then it went above, right, up. But then you see that the value changed from a 2 to a 1, meaning it decreased by 1. That means my new destination will be row minus 1. So to move to this coordinate, this is how the formula would be. That's how I would have to update the destination. The destination coordinates, right? The destination row and the destination column. But then don't forget to change the current, which is this previous, or else it's going to have multiple O's everywhere. So don't forget to change this to a dot so that now it has actually moved it there. Because if you leave this part and you don't change it, we can have issues. I hope that's very clear now. So yeah, I just basically use these formulas. Now, when I write this code, right, you don't just know that's the formula, and you can to double check, right? Okay, in the after the session, right, I'll actually make this as a PDF and take a screenshot of this diagram so that you can use that diagram as a reference on why when I moved up, I incremented the row or decremented the column so that you understand, you can picture it in the diagram. I would advise you write it on a piece on your take a piece of paper and a pen. It's better that way. Trust me, if you don't do it that way, you're gonna struggle. Your code won't run. There's a lot involved in this thing. So now we understand movements, right? It's simple. You need to find the coordinates of the character you're looking for because we don't know. Remember, we don't know. If you look at our code, right? Um, oh, I'm not done. No, I'm not done. Yeah, I'm not done. Yeah, before I'm talking about movement, but I'm not done with allocation. My bad. Remember, we're only displaying empty spaces. Let me build and run. Yeah, my bad. It's coming back now. I remember that it was only an empty space and an operator. That's the only things we displayed. So we need to, but then it's fine. We can continue understanding movement. Then we'll go back to allocate. Then we move to go back to movement. So you need to, the first step is to find the coordinates of the thing you're looking for. We don't know the coordinates because we choose randomly. Remember, we're calling gen rand. We don't know. Most of the time, remember this character is going to be placed randomly. So it's a random row, it's a random column. How do you expect me to predict that? So I can't predict that. That's why we're going to need to create a function that goes through all of the characters in my 2D array. So that means you're going to need two for loops for that. And then let me zoom in. And then you check this, you start at index row 0, column 0. Is it, you ask the question, is it an empty space or is it that thing you're looking for? Let's say you're looking for an operate. You're going to do an if statement. This is the character at this current row and column equals to an operate? Nope. Then you move to the next, and then next, and so forth until we get here. And then if it returns true, that means we found the row and column. Then we can just simply leave the function, right? We can simply leave the function. Okay, let me close. So we understand movement, right? Movement is not a problem. We perfectly understand it now. Let's go back to placing the game characters. So let me open the PDF. Let's see if I can find it. Which paper was this? I keep forgetting. Is it 2023? This is ComSci 2A. Is it 2023 paper? I think it's a 2023 paper A, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it's 2023 paper A. Let's open it. Yeah, lucky enough, yeah, my memory is not taking today. So this is the one we need to create, right? This is the one we're working on. So remember, we're still placing our things. So we haven't finished initialization, but I explained movement. So now we understand movements, right? So we're gonna deal, you see, with the movement here, we're gonna deal with that later. I think in today's session, right, we'll be able to cover finish this whole part about initialization and do the movement. And then in tomorrow's session, we finish up with updates. This is just simple if statements. Basically, once we're done with this initialization and movement, we're basically done with the game. Like we've done it like 80% of the game. Because the rest of these things, right? You go to the part, you see the update. You go to the part when the user moves, and then you make those changes by simply putting if statements. So this is just if you see this part over here. All of this is just if statements. Simple. That's easy. It's not you don't even need to create a function. It's if statements. Then end game is just output, see out. So like I said, if you can master initialization properly and you follow instructions and do movement, you can get very high marks. A distinction is possible. And another advice I need to give you guys, leave the output. There's no marks for output. If you didn't know, there's no marks for output. So basically, students, they spend 30 minutes, 1 hour trying to make it show like this. There's no marks for that. Do you know? Did you know that there's no marks for this? Not even 1 mark. There's none. There's no marks for output. So leave that. If it's there, if it's there, I think it's like 4 marks. I'm lying. I think it might be there, but it's not important. Yeah, you see, yeah, it's for 5 marks. It's worth 5% of the paper. 95% of the paper is function allocation, deallocation, all those things. 95% of the paper. So leave things that are unimportant. Don't worry about output. You can. I know students, even me. I got a top achiever award for ComSci 1P, and my code was not displaying. Like there was nothing. There was no game. There was nothing. No, there was no output. It's not second semester, it's not a game. There was no output. But I managed to get 98% for the semester test too. So don't worry about output. Don't Output is not gonna help you in any way because the more you focus on output or worry about output, you start not to answer the question. You do your own spiritual things. So you need to answer the question first, then worry about output later. If it gives you errors, just leave it. leave the venue. Even if you still have 30 minutes, if it's giving you problems, leave the output. There's no marks for it. So the world is filled in this following order. So we need to fill the world in this order. So basically, our allocate function or initialization function, we need to process it in that in a specific order. I'm just checking my phone. Oh, uh, okay, let's continue. So you need to do it in this order inside your allocate world function. You can call it allocate or allocate world. That's up to you. So let's go back to it. I just called it allocate. You can, yeah, in full, I would advise you call it allocate world because if you just say allocate, it's like, what do you mean allocate? So just write allocate world. Then we have we have our functions here, which we're placing the operator. So what I'm going to do, right? Um, yeah, I'm going to create a function. Let me show you something about placing the game characters, right? Remember, the game mode starts as end, meaning there's dots everywhere. Then you place one thing at a time. Let's say we've placed the operator there, right? Remember, random row and random column, it means they are random. That means I might produce rows and columns for an already occupied space or occupied block. So if that happens, I need to regenerate again. And sometimes since it's random, even if I regenerate again, there's a high chance of or high probability of it generating the same coordinates. So we need to actually create a function that's a separate function that does that because there's quite a lot involved. And we're gonna need to repeat that for all the features, right? So I'm gonna create a function that we call place feature, right? I'm gonna call it place feature. We call them game characters, right? You see this symbol. Let me teach you terminology or the English that's used. These symbols BO dot, we call this game characters, right? That's why if you notice my array inside my header file, I've called it game characters because it represents the characters in my game. For gamers out there, they should definitely understand this. So these are the game characters. So we might have a chance of uh, generating a random location of an already occupied block. Or if it's not this location, right? Let's say I want to place a bet. uh, Let's say the random row and random column points me here. It's already occupied, so I need to generate again randomly. Then if I generate it randomly again, you see it's already occupied. And this thing can the computer is random, right? So this thing can keep on pointing back to already occupied locations. So we don't know how many times this chair this chair how many times C++ which keep generating coordinates for cells, we can call them cells or blocks that are already occupied. It might keep on regenerating coordinates for blocks or cells that are already occupied. So we need to use a while loop. We remember we talked about loops. We need to use a while loop because we don't know how many times we have to keep on regenerating if it already points to an already occupied space. So since and another thing, right? Remember we are placing the feature. Let me think about it. We are placing the feature. So yeah, if I'm placing the feature, I need to take in the game mode itself, which is the array, the 2D array, and how many rows and columns because it is rows and columns. Then after that, what was the next thing? I need to take in the feature or the game feature that I want to place in my game world. Then I'm gonna take in um the just the game feature. Yeah, I think that should suffice now for now. And this function is gonna be void, right? It won't return any. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, we don't return anything. There's no need. So I'm gonna call it void place feature. It places my game feature or game character. Another word for feature is character, game character, which is those symbols for that are in my game. So it's gonna take in my array, which is the 2D array, game world, because it represents my that 2D array represents my game world. That's why I'm calling it game world. Then I'm going to take a const integer representing my rows, const integer representing my columns, and then I'm going to take in the feature that I want to place. Remember, we talked about that's why it's really important to attend every session and understand what we're doing. Remember, we created, where is it? Yeah, we talked extensively about this part. The array is an array of integers. So the feature itself, it's actually an integer. So that's why I'm gonna pass in my function. You'll notice that when you start doing enums, we're not gonna be passing integer. It's gonna be a bit different, but then it's still the same thing. So we're gonna have our array of 6 game features or game characters, whereby at each index we store a game feature as an integer. But then when we output to the user, we output it in a readable form. Basically, we convert each integer to a specific symbol. But under the hood, we know for a fact that our array is a 2D array of integers. So basically, basically, in other words, right, a feature is actually an integer. So the parameter that I need to pass that represents my feature is an integer. So const int feature, right? That's the thing I want to place. And then remember that we might try to place the feature in a, how do I put it? We might try to place a feature on top of another feature, or basically on top of another game character. Remember what I said? This is random row and random column. That means that you might try to place on this already occupied block or cell. It's already occupied. So you must regenerate again. So I need to pass into this function another feature to compare that if it keeps pointing to this feature, then you need to regenerate the random row and regenerate the random column. If it points to another feature, it needs to regenerate. So how do I check that? Oh, I don't know. Oh, yeah, no, okay, now I remember. There's a better way of doing it. You don't have to actually pass that feature because why? You see that there's multiple features. I would actually have to pass all of them. I have a battery, I have this, I have this. Basically, if you notice something, right, think about it logically. Let me zoom in a bit. Think about it logically. The game feature or game's character we're trying to place, it's going to be placed on top of what? An empty space. So that means at that specific random row and random column that we generated, it needs to point to an empty space. If it doesn't point to an empty space, that means it points to an already occupied space or block. So let's write that in code. So I think this should be fine, right? Yeah, this is fine. You don't need the rows and columns, right? No, what do I mean? No, my bad. You don't need other parameters. This is basically it, right? That's the full function. You don't need any more parameters. Then I'm gonna do something here. I'm gonna try to place the feature. Remember, in order to place the feature, I generate a random row and column, right? Yeah, random row and columns. And I want you to notice something, right? Pay attention to how I'm doing things. This place feature only exists inside CPP because why? I didn't put in my header file because why? It's not meant for the user. It's meant for me to make my code easier. I don't want to repeat myself. That's why I made a separate a method. Remember, we talked about methods or functions. That's why I made a separate function because I want to save code. I don't want to keep on repeating myself. Remember, I'm placing more than one feature. What do I mean by that? I'm going to place an operator, but I might try to place it in a space that's already occupied. I need to also try and place a battery, which can be placed in a space that's already occupied. You see that the code is similar. It's exactly the same thing. So why not avoid repeating myself and just create a function that stores that code and simply call the function? So I'm gonna say int row. So this is my random row. So int random row is equals to, remember we have a function that generates random rows. So gen rand int starts from 0 up to number of rows. That's why we're passing the rows. Number of rows minus 1, right? And then int random column is equals to gen random int from 0 to calls -1 because I'm generating a random column. Then I try to place the feature in my game mode, right? That's how simple it is, right? So I'm going to try to place my feature inside of my game mode. Let's try that. How do we do that? You could use your array, which is my game mode. It's called game mode. You specify a row because remember, said the first square brackets represents the row. So I need to pass the row. Which row? The random row I generated because remember these things are placed randomly, and I pass in the random column that I generated. Then at that specific random row and random column, I initialize it to some feature. Remember, we talked about it. This 2D array is an array of integers. So I need to initialize it to a feature that's an integer, which is basically the constants that we talked about. Remember, these constants. It will be initialized to one of these constants. When we call it, for now, we are creating it. We're still writing the implementation. So this feature, I actually pass it here. It's the last parameter. So it's called feature. So I'm going to initialize that to this feature. Whatever is passed there is the last parameter. But then remember, we talked about that if you try and place this thing, right? Remember the random row and random column, it needs to be on a, oh, no. Okay, to save to write less code, right? Let me not place it, right? No, it's fine. Placing it will be the last part. Let's do in between here. So here in between, right? Remember what I talked about, a random row and a random column, they are random. That means I'm a generate a location, a random location that's already occupied. So I need to make sure that location is not already occupied, right? How do we do that? We check at that specific coordinate, right? We make sure we need to, if it wasn't an empty space, then we know we've generated a random location that points to a cell or a location that's already occupied. So yeah, we need to do that. So let's do that. So if it's not an empty space, remember what we talked about. You're only allowed to place a feature on top of an empty space. So if the random row and random column doesn't point to an empty space, that means it points to something. So we don't want to override or delete that thing that's already there. No, we want to place on only cells that are not occupied. So that means I'm going to go back here and then I'm going to use a while loop. Why a while loop? Because why do I use a while loop? Because remember we talked about it that you might you'll generate a location, right? Let's say you try to generate a new one. You might point to another occupied cell. There's a high chance of it happening. Remember, this is just based on probability. There's a high probability of it happening. So we need to avoid that by using a while loop to say as long as my game world, right, at that specific random row that I've generated and that specific random column that I've generated, as long as they are not equals to an empty space. Basically, the random location that I've generated, right? This random location that I've generated, it does not point to an empty space. That means it points to something. So I'm basically trying to do something spiritual. I'm trying to delete what's already there. So I need to make sure I don't do that. So what should I do? Why should I do inside the while loop? As long as that's the case. I need to keep on regenerating the random rows and columns, basically repeating this. But then since it's already declared at the top, C++, in C++, right, you only declare something once. You can't declare the same thing twice with the same name. So now you just simply delete the types and just use the variable because C++ knows this part is there. It knows you've declared them. So while this is the case, so basically remember while loop, it will keep on running as long as the condition is true, meaning as long as I still point to something that's not a space. As long as the random location and random column is not equals to an empty space, keep on generating a random location. And then if it reaches this part over here, the closing curly brace, this one over here, right? This one over here, it means that it has found an unoccupied cell. Then after the while loop, that's when only then that's when you can place the feature, because now we know 100% probability that we've placed the feature on an empty space. Yeah, I hope that explanation makes sense. So let's call the function, right? So we need to place our feature. We could have actually used it to place a yeah. Yeah, to be honest, we're gonna repeat. Um yeah, let me see. No, no, let's leave this code. Remember the operator, right? It's specific. It's placed in a very specific location. The other features, right? Look at the range of my random number. It's any row, any column. So since it's any row in any column, it's kind of a problem. So I can't use this function to place an operator, because an operator is not placed on any row. It's placed on only the last row. So I can use this function to place the operator. Most of the time, the player itself is going to be placed in a unique location. Then the other game features can be placed anywhere in our game mode. So now let's place the features. So I'm going to say place let's see. Remember, there's things like probability, right? Yeah, there's things like probability. So we need to do that. So let's see. Um, let's see. Yeah, they said the switch is located in a random column at the top of the row. Yeah, this is kind of I don't like this. This is really annoying, to be honest. There's this thing of games and what, especially if they give you like they keep on changing. Like it's not fixed. For example, switch is placed in only the top row. That means I can't use the place feature function. That means I'm gonna have a lot of code. And I might remember by the time I reach bullet two, right? You see, by the time I reach bullet number two, the operator already exists. It's already placed in my game mode. That means there's a high probability of me placing a switch on top of an operator. So I have to make sure I don't do that, which is basically the same while loop as here, right? It's similar to this. But this time around, we'll check if it points to an operator. As long as it points to an operator, that means you're trying to place the switch on top of the operator. So keep regenerating the random integer and random row and random column. So I hope my explanations are making sense. So place my switch. So I'm gonna need a no, I don't need, yeah, yeah, it's fine. I'm gonna need a random in a random column, right? So random column, right? Remember they say it's placed in the top row. Yeah, top row. Remember top row, it's always row zero. Like we even have a diagram for it. You see, there's top row. If they say top column, there's top column. It's the first column, which is column zero. So I know that I can literally put zero there, but I don't want to do that. I'll actually put it in a variable. To be honest, you don't have to do this, but I like to use variables. Top row would be zero. So this would be top row, right? Because it's the first row. Bottom row is the last row. And we talked about the formula for that. It's always the size, or basically the number of rows minus one, or the number of columns minus one. That's how you find the last row or the last column, because you're counting from zero. If you're counting from zero, that means you only stop at the number before the actual number of things. Basically, if you have 7 rows, you start counting from zero. You only stop at the number before 7, which is going to be 6. So how do you get 6? It's 7 minus 1. What is 7? It's rows. So therefore, the formula is rows minus 1. So yeah, I'm trying Shem to explain this thing and make it simple. I hope you guys are understanding. So random column, right? Let's generate a random column, and it can be any column. So 0 to calls -1, right? Then we try to place the switch, right? Let's place the switch. So I'm gonna just put space there. After I have my coordinates, right? It's stored under the variables random row and random column. So let's try to place my switch. I think there's a constant called switch. Let's check. Is it a switch? You see, they're mixing up terms, these people. I don't like it. Let's look at what is a switch here. Um, where the operator is, oh, it's a star. Yeah, main switch is a star. Ish. Yeah, these people are mixing up things. They should have just said a star. Or choose one thing. If they said switch, switch everywhere. Now they're saying main switch star. It's also a star. Like they're confusing. So yeah, sometimes you need to always read. You see how much reading I'm doing in the document? Because I'm trying to make sure I answer the question. So it's called a star, right? So that means I'm gonna go use my array 2D array, which is called the game mode. Go to this specific row, which is random row. Go to the specific column, which is a random column variable, and then it's equals to a star or a switch. I initialize that to a star or this. But before I do that, remember this okay, not random row, the random column. It can point to, oh no, no. Yeah, let's think about it. Let's think about it from a logical perspective. Use common sense. The remember the row, the row for yeah, let me do this right. Yeah, this is a random. It's not really random. Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, okay, yeah, it's not fine. Remember what I told you about C++, if the variable is already declared, it's gonna complain. You see, there's already random column here. And here I'm already trying to redeclare it again. So it's gonna shout at me at that line. So let me build, you'll see. You see, shouts at me. So I need to remove the type. So what I would do, right? It's not really a random row, but I'm gonna just reuse the same variables everywhere and then keep on changing them. So I'm gonna declare this random row here, copy it, and then put it here, and then remove the int there because it's gonna think that I'm trying to redeclare it. So I don't want it to get confused. Then I just reuse the same variable. So I'll just use the same variables every time I'm placing a feature. You see that I'm saving time. I don't have to come up with different names of variables because coming up with variable names can be tedious. It can be hard. So yeah, I was talking about this feature. Remember that I was saying that there's a high chance of you placing a switch or a star on top of your operator. But to be honest, there's no chance. It will never happen. It's impossible. Why? Because for the operator, we always place it at the bottom row. Basically this, let me build and run here. Now it will show us the star. You see the star now. Yeah, there's the star S. You see, it'll only use the bottom row to place this. It'll only use the top row to place that. So they'll never actually meet. So lucky enough, right? You won't always be lucky. You need to understand your problem. Lucky enough in this problem, in this code, right? Lucky enough, they're in two different locations. If there was a high probability of them being occupied in the same location, I would have to have that while loop. Remember the place feature while loop, this one, to keep on checking that as long as it's still pointing to an already occupied location, basically it points back to a switch, to an operator. I mean, that means that I'll be trying to place my switch on top of an operator. So I need to regenerate the random column or random row. In this case, I don't have to because they'll never occupy the same cell. I hope that makes sense. Then here I'm going to place my what is this? Place my batteries and then wire. So I need to place my batteries and wires. So I'm gonna go here and say place my batteries, right? And then you need to make when you place, yeah, you see how easy it becomes. It becomes quite easy. Let's look at something, right? I don't know how many batteries, right? That's the thing. I don't know how many batteries. I think we do get the number. Oh, they only say the probability. So they said the probability of a battery, or the probability of the probability of a battery, the probability of exposed wire. So that means each cell has a probability of having a wire or a battery. Each cell. By each cell, it means I need to go through the whole entire game. Each cell has a probability. What does that mean? It means that if I move here, if let's say the user entered 10% as the chance, as a probability. What we do, right? How do we write that in code? At each time, at each coordinate, right? Each cell, we generate a random percentage. We check, and then we check if that random percentage is less than or equals to the probability. That's always the formula, always. If it's not less than or equals to, then it will simply skip, right? And then we move to the next cell. We generate a random percentage, we compare, generate random, generate, and so forth. But then just be careful of something. Remember, we're lucky enough we did fix that. We have a while loop inside of our place feature, which states that if the random row and random column that I've generated doesn't point to, or that location, right? Not really. This is tricky. I don't like this preg, to be honest. I don't like it. Because why? Why do I say so? Remember when they said each cell has a specific percentage of probability of containing a, what is a probability of containing a wire or a this, what is this? A wire or or what is this? A bed, a wire or a bed. So it is a probability of containing a wire or bed. Each cell. That means we're not generating a random row and random column. So we can't use place feature, which is quite a drag. It's quite annoying, to be honest. Okay, we can use it in a different way. Let's don't. That's why I advise not to cram code, because the way I'm about to do place feature right now, right, it's not going to be the same way as you guys do it in tutorial, right? But then this will be the code if each feature is placed randomly. It will never change. It will always be like this. So I have to delete this because my game or my semester test is different. I need to do things different. So I need to check here. I need to pass in the thing that I want to place, right, which is the feature. So the function is still the parameters are still the same. The thing that has changed is the code, because it's not when you're placing each of the batteries or wires, we don't actually generate a random row or random column. We go through each row in each column. So that's why I need to change this. Yeah, you can unmute and ask a question.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I was asking about the things that like you see on the mark sheet there, like
On the mark
that.
sheet.
Yeah, like
Yeah, let
that.
me go to the mark sheet. Well, yeah, can you please name it? Like, is it C1, C3, C7? Can you name it?
Yeah, like my question is, they say in the tutorial, they say there are some of the things that are only like say 5 marks just for a specific question, and a lot of marks, as you say in our last meeting, that they are needed. The functions that are needed for each and every game to operate. Can you please show us like after the video and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. Your audio is kind of bad. I can sometimes hear you, but then I think I kind of get what you're saying. You're saying that your lecturers, right, in the tutorial in class, they told you that some of the things here, they're just additional, right? They're just like they're not really needed. It's just extra things that you can choose to put or not to put. Then there's things that are very important for in order for the game to work. Without them, the game won't work.
yes,
That's what you're saying, right?
yeah, yes.
Yeah. So what's the question now? Yeah, you've told me about that. So what is the question? Are you still there?
So can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh yeah, my question is,
Yeah. I can't hear. It's quiet now. I don't know. Can you try and type down the question?
also those one that you deleted that you said for us to put for our game to
Uh,
display the
uh, hey, bro, can you slow down a bit? I couldn't hear you the whole time. Can you start afresh your question? I couldn't hear you. Now it's clear. I couldn't hear you at all. You were quiet.
them and to understand them.
Yeah, can you ask your question again? Like, I couldn't hear you. Bro, the best thing is to type. Just type the question because now it's gonna. You see that you're consuming a lot of time now. It's on your side. So type down the question. So let me make it show on your side. Okay, let's lower the hand. Let me show you here. So there's gonna be a pop-up on your side. So I'm gonna say type here. So there should be a pop-up on your side. Click on that pop-up and type your question. So I'll answer your question, I think towards the end. So let me quickly continue here. So empty locations, right? You need to understand English. They said each empty locations. That means it's the whole array, it's the whole game. And then it's the same thing applies for wires too. So that means I need to go through each coordinate. That means I need to have those two for loops that go, first one that goes through the array, the rows. So int r is equals to 0. Yeah, okay. Don't cram, right? You see here I use I and j because that's normally how you use that in the industry. I think from now on I'll just stick to R and C for row. R meaning a row, C meaning column. So R is less than rows, R plus plus. Then each row, remember each row has the exact same number of columns. So that's why I'm going to put the columns loop inside the rows loop. Starting at 0, C is less than calls, C++, right? So at each index, right, which is basically this. So we need to try and place our feature. Remember, they said it is a random, it is a probability. What is a probability, right? It means it's a percentage, meaning between 0 to, we started 0%, meaning that it is a 0% chance of it occurring, up to 100%, which is a 100% chance of it occurring. So that means I need to generate a random percentage or a random percentage and check if the percentages that are going to be passed, right? So that means this place feature function needs to take in one extra thing, the percentage. So I'm gonna take in here const int percentage or probability, not my bad, probability. It's not going to be changed, right, inside the function. I'll just simply use it. So that's why I'm using the const. Const is optional, right? You don't have to necessarily put it, but I put it because that's correct. That's the correct way of coding. So I'm gonna pass in, it's gonna be constant, meaning it can't be changed inside this function, which is fine because I don't want to change it. This prevents the user from the person implementing this function from trying to change it. Then after the probability, we take in the feature. I don't know why it's not showing. Why is my thing is weird. So after the probability, we take in the game feature. So yeah, let's do that now. So now we have this function takes in the probability. Let's generate the random probability. Remember, it's of type int. To be honest, it's a positive number, so you can actually make it unsigned. Because remember unsigned, it's any numbers, any range starting from 0 and above. And the percentage starts from 0 to 100. So it qualifies as an unsigned, meaning positive. You could do that, but there's no need to do that. I'll just leave it for advanced people who really understand C++. So int, I'm gonna call it random percentage, right? I'm gonna generate a random percentage. Remember, generate random, we have a generate function for that. So generate int starting from 0 up until 100. It starts at exactly 100, stops at exactly 100. It starts at exactly 0%, it stops at exactly 100%. So it's a random percentage between 0 and 100. Then that percentage that gets generated, right? We check if within range of probability, right? Of each feature, right? By each feature, I mean it's either a wire or a battery, right? That's what I mean. So you check if this random percentage, right? You check if it's less than or equals to the probability of which is we're gonna pass it here. The probability of a of a let me think about it. Probability of a battery or probability of a wire, right? But then remember, we might place it on on an already occupied location, so we need to avoid that. So how would I avoid it since it doesn't involve random rows and random columns? Because if it was involving random rows and random columns, I would simply regenerate those random rows and random columns. This time around, I can't. I'm just going through each cell. So what I can do is, if I find that space occupied, I skip. If it's not occupied, then I continue. So how do I display that specific location? I need to check if it's an empty space first. So I need to say if my game mode, which is my 2D array, at that specific row, column, if it's equals to an empty space, then I can place my features. Because if it's not equals to an empty space, that means it's already occupied. I should skip it. So I perfectly understand that. So now let me do the comparison. So I need to check random integer here. So let's start by placing the batteries, right? Then I'm gonna say if my my random percentage, right, is less than or equals to that probability, right, that we're taking in. No, I'm not placing the batteries, I'm placing the features. Remember, this accommodates all features you're trying to place, whether a battery or a wire. So let me not be specific because it's not a function that's specific. You can use it for any feature, especially yeah, either a wire or a battery. Only those. Don't try to place anything else. So yeah, so when we take in the feature that we want to put in put in a specific location. So which is this feature variable. So I'm going to copy this, right? And then I'm going to place that feature into my game mode. Remember, I have a 2D array. At RC is equals to that feature that this function takes in. And then done. And then it's going to repeat this for all the cells because remember it's inside two for loops, meaning it's going through all the cells. It's going to check all of them. Before we place the feature, we need to check if it's equals to an empty space, meaning the cell is not occupied. If it's not occupied, then cool. Within that part, we now do place the feature. But not to place the feature, we place it only if it is less than or equals to the probability, because they said it is a specific probability, meaning it's a chance. It's like Betway. There's a chance you may win, there's a chance you may lose. So there's a chance that the game feature may be there. There's a chance whereby the game feature might not be there. So therefore, you need to check if that chance is there by simply checking if the random percentage we generated, if it's less than or equals to the probability, then we can say that, yeah, it has a chance. Display that feature there. And we only display it if it's not occupied, meaning it has a dot. It's an empty cell. Then I'm gonna scroll down here. I'm gonna go to my code. Let's place the batteries, right? But then I don't know how many batteries you're supposed to place. I think it's up to you because they didn't tell you, right? You see, they said you only take. Oh no, what am I saying? It's fine. The number of batteries will be based on the probability. Yeah, what am I saying? Hey, being chowed by maths now. So I just simply call the method. So place feature, I pass in my 2D array, which is called game mode. Remember when you call, I want you to understand something about functions, right? When you call functions, you only pass names. It's enough for C++ to know. Just pass names. Don't be passing special things like a type in. No, it will crash. It will never work. And you won't know why it's not working. You pass only the names of things. So I pass in the name of my array, which is game mode, comma. It expects me to pass the rows. I just simply pass the name is called rows, comma. It expects me to pass the columns. So I just simply pass the name of the columns, which is called calls, comma. It expects me to pass the probability. I'm placing a battery. So I need to pass in the probability of, put in the probability of a battery. So I need to say battery probability. So battery probability, then comma. We're not done yet. That's not all the parameters. The last parameter is the feature that we're trying to display. We said the game character. Well, we're trying to display a what? A battery. And then semicolon. And then you're done. It places the batteries. Let me show you. It might not. Remember the probability. But there should be at least one. Yeah, you see? There's quite a lot of batteries, you see, to place them. And notice something here. It never places them on top of an already occupied cell because I did an if statement to check. You see, I did an if statement to check. Then I can also place my, I can repeat this and place my, place my wires, right? So place my wires. So place feature. What's the name of my array? Game mode. What's the name of my rows? It's called rows. What's the name of my columns? Calls. What's the name of my probability? Since I'm placing a wire probability, it's called wire probability. Comma, what's the name of the thing that I want to display? I need to pass in that constant, which is the wire constant. Where am I getting the wire probability and battery probability? Remember this function, right? It takes in parameters from the user. There it is. Battery percentage, battery probability, I mean, wire probability. And to be honest, you're not going to change this thing at all, right? You're going to use them. So they should all be const, if I'm being quite frank with you. Let's make them const. So const. Yeah, just to be very accurate, because you might make a mistake and change it in the function implementation. And then your code, it does somewhat work. You don't want that. And then const. Remember your header file function prototype should match, even the data types and the order should match with the parameters inside of a CPP file. If they don't match, it crashes. It doesn't compile. So be very aware of that. That's why when I change my thing, when I update here, I also update my header file. Else it's gonna crash. So don't be shocked when you see my code run without no errors, because I know what I'm doing. Because when I change something, I also change it in the other locations that I need to change it in. So I'm gonna build and run. We should see wires, right? Which is W. Yeah, you see, there's my game. So my game is done. I've displayed all the symbols, and you see that they're not on top of each other and anything, right? They're placed properly, right? They're not placed on top of each other. Then the user can pick them up, eat them, whatever, all those things. We'll do that later, right? So now let's go to movement. Then we'll end our session here. Let's go to movement. So to move, right? Remember we talked about integers, right? We need 4. We need to find the coordinates of yeah, we need to really understand this part. See this part, this is the part where you really need to pay attention, because that's the very important part, the movement. Once you're done with movement, trust me, there's nothing that will ever challenge you in this code. Nothing. So yeah, my bad. Remember, we talked about update being an if statement. My bad. It shouldn't be a function. We're gonna have to remove that function when we get there. We are not there yet. So in Fennec, we say skapap, relax. We'll get there when we get there. I'm gonna leave it as it is right now. So don't ask me why I'm not removing it if we shouldn't be there. We're not there yet. So move operator. So let's declare variables that store my current location is going to be int current row is equals to something. But what is the location? Yeah, it becomes very problematic. I need to find the location. Basically, I need a function that can return, or not necessarily return, but it can find the location. And it doesn't need to be known by the user, so I don't declare it in the header file. I only just implement it inside my CPP file, meaning it only exists in the CPP file. So I'm going to say void, because it shouldn't return anything. Remember, we're not there yet on record structures. If we were there on record structure, we could return the record structure. Remember, record structure, it's a type that can store variables of different types, more than one variable. It's like an array. A record structure is like an array, but the only difference is that an array can store only the same data types. A record structure can store different data types, meaning you can have a string and also a char and also an int and also a boolean mixed all together to represent one thing. So you can do that. But we're not there yet on that. We'll do it in the next question paper. So I'm going to create a function called find player, right? Not find player such, it should be called find feature because it finds our game feature. And then what parameters does it need? Always we need our array because how will we, because our array represents our game mode, right? So if we don't have our array, how will we find the feature? Because we need to go inside the game mode. So const int, and this game mode is a size, so I need to pass in the rows and columns. Const int calls, and then what's the other parameter? What's the other thing that we can pass? What I would advise you to do, right, is you can pass in two variables. Remember, this is now you needing to understand functions. That's why I always say that you don't rush with past papers. You rush to understand C++ itself first. Basically, know what a function is, know what a reference, what is this pointers, what a pointer parameter is, what are pointers, all these things. Remember, we talked about that, or pass by reference, all those things. You need to understand them first before you attempt. Here, I'm going to use pass by reference. Why? Because I want to make sure that I save the coordinates of the feature that when I found it. So I need to pass in, and I'm going to update it, right? Since I'm going to update it, I'm not going to put in const because const is when you don't want to update it. I want to update it, so I'm going to remove const and say int. This will represent the row of the feature, but then we want to remember, why do I use the pass by reference? Because this function, remember functions so far, right now, we haven't done record structure, right? Right, record structures, right? Excuse me. So we haven't done record structures, right? So what this function can only return is one thing at a time. We want it to return two coordinates or two variables that represent one coordinate, int row, int call, right? So we need to return those, but how? So that means we can't. We can achieve that by actually using pass by reference, because remember pass by reference. When you pass by reference, it means that if that variable is changed within the function, even when the function is even when you go outside the function, those changes that are made in the function, they remain true, which is exactly what I want because I want it to have the coordinates. So I'm gonna pass them by reference and say int pass by reference, comma int pass by reference call, comma. Remember, this is a find feature, so it needs to find a feature. So in order to find a feature, we need to tell it which feature to look for, right? So I need to pass the feature. So const int feature, which is the feature that I need to look for. So in full, my function will be like this. Let me zoom out a bit. It's quite a lot of parameters, as you can see, because we need our 2D array. You'll notice something, right? When we have record structures, our parameters become smaller and fewer and fewer. So yeah, we have our game mode array, which has a size rows, columns, and we need to pass in two variables that will help us save the coordinates, so that when we leave this function, we have stored the coordinates in the variables. Then we need to pass in the feature that we're trying to find. Remember, this function is called find feature. To be honest, technically in the future, right, you might want to return a boolean which is basically return true or false if the feature was found. Sometimes you might want to use this function, but not to that extent. Let's not use it like that. Let's just use it as a void, simple. So inside here, I need to find my feature. How do I find it? I need to go through each cell. So two for loops because it's 2D. So I need to go through all of my rows, and I need to, in my bed, typing too fast. Then yeah, then I go within at each index or at each row, I go through each column. So int c is equals to C0, C is less than call C++. Then once I'm here, I can use my 2D array, right? Remember, this is the 2D array. So that 2D array, I can use it to check if I found the feature, which is basically an if statement. So check if the feature was found. By feature, we mean game Harrington, right? Basically, is it a operator? Is it a what? We can use it to find any feature, any. So if game world at that specific, listen to what I'm about to say. If game world at the current location, which is current R, which is current row and current column, at that current row where I currently am right now, if it's equals to the feature that I'm trying to find, remember I've called it feature. There it is over here. I've called it feature. Or you can just call it this. Maybe it might be easier to remember. So it's a feature that you want to find. So I'm going to call it feature to find, because that's the feature that I'm looking for, or the feature that I want to find. So if my game mode is the feature that I want to find, then that means I found it, right? This part here means feature was found. So if it was found, remember I'm passing the variables passed by reference. This is for row and column. That means I can update it in my function. Even when I leave the function, it will save those changes. Remember, we had a session on that. Go revise pass by reference. So I need to save. Remember, I told you at current coordinate RC. So I need to save that RC if the feature was found. So int row is equals to R. No, not int row. Now I'm thinking about Dr. Stungu's way of typing. And then call is equals to C, right? Simple, the feature was found. Once the feature is found, remember I forgot to talk about something. In C++, there's two keywords. Let's talk about that. In C++, right, there's two keywords. There's break and then there's continue. They are used, the break, you've seen it in a switch statement, right? It means it helps to break that case, or to leave that, or basically to leave the switch statement. Its goal is to exit the switch statement. Break can also be used to exit a loop, basically the surrounding loop. Basically, it keeps on it checks the Kelly braces it checks the Kelly braces of the loop that it is inside of, and then it leaves that loop. But to be honest, I'm gonna teach you something advanced here. Yeah, I'm gonna teach you. Yeah, you will see. I'm gonna teach you some powerful stuff here. Let me think about it. Go to. Hey, you know, I'm entering God mode now. The way I'm thinking about the code now, because you need to break the loop, right? The thing is, remember what I'm about to listen to what I'm explaining, right? I want you to pay close attention here. The break keyword, right? Number one, it has two purposes. It can leave or exit a switch statement. That's its first purpose. Then its second purpose is to leave the loop in which it is called in. So that loop where you've called that break keyword, it leaves that loop. So for example, there's the loop here, right? This loop. If you call break here and you say break, meaning it means leave this loop. That means you don't go through all the rest of the columns. It will simply leave it. It means it will just go here. You see here, it will just go to this part. Then it goes here to this curly brace of the outermost loop, which is the first loop. Then it goes back to the top. Then it increments by one, then it checks if this is true, and then it runs again. But then do you see the problem? We keep on running, even though I'm breaking from the loop, I'm leaving the loop. We keep on running. That's not what we want. So these words, you see that these keywords will actually limit us. You can also use continue. Continue, what do you know what continue does, right? If you say continue, it's another word for skip. It means if I had two if statements, let's say I have this if statement, and then after here I had another if statement. The moment you click continue, it leaves the loop, right? It ignores the 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 rest of the lines of code that are at the bottom, but it doesn't exit it. That's the difference. Remember, break leaves it entirely. It simply continues. So when you click continue, it points you to here, increments, and you move to the next index. That's what continue does. It means skip this index. That's what continue does. You use continue when you want to skip. In our case, I'm going to teach you something, the last thing. Yeah, to be honest, even Dr. Stung is gonna be proud of you guys if you use this, because it's kind of smart. We have the go to keyword, right? Go to as it reads, it means go to this. So how do you tell C++ to go to a specific place? Remember, we wanted to leave all the loops. I'm not sure if C++ will allow me to do this. It should. To be honest, it should. Let's use it, right? The go to right keyword, how do you use it? Use it like this. You type go to small letters. Notice how I'm typing it. Small letters. Don't do spiritual things and capitalize. It's not gonna work. Space followed by the name, right? The name after the name is like a label. We call them labels. So basically, you can give things labels. How do you give things labels? Then you basically go above the thing. I think most of the time it's above, right? Above the thing. But anyway, any empty space, as long as it's within the function, you give it a label. Let's say this is, I'll call it this start, meaning that's the start of my loop. I can tell C++ to go to there. It can actually skip everything and actually go to here, to that label. So I can just run the command go to start. Then it goes to start. There it skips, it goes there to start. But I don't want to go there, because if you go there, like Chris Brown said in that song, Don't Judge Me. I don't want to go there. So don't go there, right? We should never go there, like Chris Brown said. So don't go there, because if you go there, it's gonna continue in read at all the other cells, which is not important. Because like I said, we found the feature we're looking for. I would rather, okay, let me show you that this thing does work, so I don't think I'm lying, right? Let me try to build. You see, no errors. The go to, I know go to, it works. This is how you do it. You simply put a label of where you want to go to. Yeah, it should be fine. Yeah, it should work. But we don't want to go to there. We want to go to where? Remember, this is where the first for loop ends. So this is where it ends, right? As you can see, it highlights in black. There is. So after this for loop ends, I need to actually create here and say, I'm going to call this variable, this label, leave for loop, right? That's what I'm going to call it. And then I'm going to tell C++ to jump there. I think it should work. The thing is, I'm not experienced with this thing. To be honest, this is my very first time using it in code in C++. I've seen it, I haven't used it. So we need to try. Yeah, okay. It seems like it doesn't allow you to do that. So unfortunately, we can't. I was about to say, hey, this would have been convenient. You could just simply go like pa and leave the function. But yeah, that's another way. Then there's another way via the. Let me teach you the normal way. There's a fourth way. Not the fourth, the second way to leave this. You can use the return keyword, right? You might be like, Marase, this is a void function. It doesn't return anything. Remember, if you started with me when the intensive revision of C++, we said that inside main.cpp, remember we return 0 here. I explained that this return 0 does two things at a time. It returns that type, that thing or that value of that specific return type of the function. And number two, it leaves the function. So you can actually only use it. You can only use one of. It's up to you to use both features or both settings, or you can only use one of them, which is to simply leave the function. If you want to simply leave the function, right, you just type in the return keyword on its own. So return semicolon. You don't put a value after the return, because why? This is void. It's gonna shout at you. So let me say I want to return 0. So you see that's gonna start shout at me. See, red line. But if I remove this and I don't specify a value, it knows, oh, you mean that you're trying to say that you only want to use the one of its features. So you want to use that one whereby you simply leave the function. So this one will leave the function. You might be like, why am I leaving the function? You might be like, Marase, why is it important? Well, imagine you have an app and that app has 2 billion users and they're looking for a person. And the person happened to be person number 3,200,000. That's where he was at that position. So would you still want to read the rest of the other millions of people, Remember, you have billions of users. How long would it take for you to get output? A very long time. That's why we need to make sure that we simply leave. We don't have to look at other people in the collection or in the array. We are done. That's why I use the return keyword here to leave the function with immediate effect because I'm done. Then once we're done leaving this, then we can go here to our movement. Yeah, today's session is a bit quite long. So, but I'm sure you guys are, I hope you guys understand it. So let's find the location of the thing. Mm, let me see here. We should be able to move. Yeah, we need to understand what we are moving here. If you check here, right, they said that the operator. You need to, that's why it's important to also understand English. So here they told you that it's the operator. And use, I want the color that's, why is this color so dull? They're not bright. I want something bright that's gonna be easy to see. Cancel like a deep orange or something, or yellow. So it says the operator may move in any direction. In order for me to move the operator, I need to find its location. Remember, it's if you go back to our allocate world function, allocate function, we generated a random column. So it's placed in a random place, the operator. I need to use the find feature method to find it. So in order to find the feature, remember it needs to take in the row and column of which or the row and column of the of where that feature is located after we found it. So I need to create those variables. That will represent my current because when we if you think about it, if you call a function to find a feature, it's gonna find it where it's currently at, right? So that will be current row and current call. So int current row is equals to no. Let me use no, what am I saying? It's fine. Let me use the curly braces. Remember, if you in C++, if you have things that are multiple things of the same type, you can separate them with the comma. So I'm gonna say it's a current call, initialize it to 0 for now. Then I find my feature, right? So find the features. Basically find the operator in my game. So that's the function I'm gonna call to find the operator. It can find any feature, to be honest. So for now, I just want to find the operator. Yeah, so we need to update our move operator function. It's a, you remember this, you see this find feature function, right? It needs the array. So I need to actually take in the array there. So I need to have to the array game world. And don't forget to change your header file too. If you don't, errors. So whatever changes you make here in the CPP file, you also make it in the header file. So const int rows, because your header file, remember, I want you to picture something about the header file, right? The header file, it takes everything you've written literally. The order of parameters, the type. If in your header file you said const int rows, and then your CPP file you say int rows, totally different. It's gonna shout at you, crash. The header file, I want you to view it as like your partner, right? Boyfriend or girlfriend. They promise you Ferrero Rocher if you get 100% on semester test 2 for ComSci 1A, right? If you get 100%, I'll buy you Ferrero Rocher. That's what the header file does. We are promising something, making a promise. So if the conditions are met, you need to fulfill that promise, right? So if the person actually does manage to get 100, of which you doubted, you think they wouldn't get it, then they get it. Give them their Ferrero Rocher. So the .cpp file for that header file, it's basically you keeping the promise. So it's you buying the Ferrero Rocher. So that's why if it doesn't match, C++ views it as like you're going against your the agreement. And even if you actually you somewhat do the work, it's not the full work. So for example, what do I mean by that? For example, your partner promised you they'll buy you Ferrero Rocher, which is chocolate. Then they decide to buy you PS. That's not the agreement. It's still chocolate. Yeah, we agree, but it's not the agreement. So that's why if you write int rows inside a header file, and then inside CVP file you write const int, it's still rows, right? It's still fine, but it's not the same thing. It's the PS and Ferrero Rocher. It's not the same thing. They need to agree. They need to match 100%. computers, right? I'm gonna be very blunt with you guys. Computer is not a place, computer science is not a place where you can make errors. One error affects everything. You have to be perfect. I agree, they say nobody's perfect. Computer doesn't care about that. You need to be perfect. It doesn't care. It doesn't have emotions. It's not a human being. So it doesn't care. You have to be precise. So keep that in mind. So that's why when I make my changes here, I need to make sure that I change in both files, or else I'm gonna face issues that I won't like. So I need to do the right thing. So I'm gonna copy this parameter to save my time, go to my header file. There's the move operator and add all the extra, make the same changes that I've made inside of my CPP file. I don't worry, I'll send you this current code. I don't know why you guys want the code, because usually I'll prefer to send it after, but it's fine. I'll send you the code. So find the operator in my game, right? I need to pass in the game world, which is this that's being passed, comma, um, the rows, which is the rows, comma, calls, then the int row and the row and the column. That will store my current row and current column. It's basically the variables current row and current call, comma, the feature to find. So it's a constant. Remember, we talked about this. The 2D array is an array of integers. Your feature is actually integers. We just created a separate arrays so that the output looks beautiful, but it's actually, we are working with an array of integers. So I need to pass the feature that I want to find. I want to find an operator. So I'm gonna pass the constant for operator, which is basically in all capital letters, the word operate. So after executing, remember what pass by reference does. After calling this function, whatever changes you've made in the functions, they continue to exist outside the function that you've called. So after calling this function, it updates current row and current call. So current row and current call after line 119, right? After that line, current row variable and current call variable, they have the actual coordinates of my operator. So now I know where the operator is. Now I can move the operator, right? So let's do that. So to move the operator, remember we were talking about this thing quite a lot. We need four coordinates. We need the current position and the destination where they are going. So I need to actually have destination variables. So I need to have int destination row. Always initialize the variables. Remember the curly braces, you can just simply replace them with is equals to 0. It's still fine. So I'm going to show you both ways. It's still exactly the same thing. So destination call is equals to 0. Then yeah, we need to update the, no, what am I doing? No, it's not 0. You actually initialize it to be default the current coordinates of the feature. Why? Because think about it, right? Let me show you in terms of diagrams. So think about, where's this thing? Yeah. Remember here, right? This was before, this was after. So the after is basically what we call the destination. In order for me to find these coordinates, right? That means that I actually have to initialize my destination rows to be the same coordinates as my current row, so that when I make the changes in the destination variables, I don't lose track, or I don't lose my location of my current feature or current operator. So I just basically simply initialize them to the same coordinates. But then I only change the destination variable, because as you see, the destination variable, you need to subtract 1 from it. And the destination column, you don't subtract anything. That's if you want to move up. So let's do that. My bad. This should be actually initialized to current row. This initialized to current column. Then now we need to move the player. We can remember that there's multiple moves, right? My bad. Oh no, I'm fine. Remember, we're taking the movement, which is a constant. So I'm going to use this movement variable in a switch statement. A switch statement is better. It's always the best in these cases. So use a switch statement. So switch because we have multiple constants or values. So I'm going to say switch movement, right? Passing the movement that I want to check. Remember, this is not reading. This is not your practical, right? Don't think about to lower to up. The integers are unique. If you still remember, look, let's go back to our movements, right? You see, the integers, all of them are unique. There's nothing of having to worry about what is, and it's not characters. We're not working with strings here. You don't have to say to lower to upper. No, it's not that one. The to lower to upper, that's main. We're not there yet. So here I'm gonna have case and say case move up, right? Remember a switch statement, how it works, right? You pass in the variable and then you check what value it has. Remember, move up is a constant. It's basically a placeholder for this number 0. So in other words, I'm basically doing this. I'm saying does movement have the value 0? In other words, it's like in a if statement, I'll be asking it like this. Movement, is it equals to 0? That's basically what I'm asking. But then remember 0, it has a name for it. We call it move up. That's why we created constants, because you see now my code, when I look at it, it can read, you can read it, right? In like English, right? So that's why we do all of that. That's why we make that all that extra effort. So here I'm gonna move up, move down, move left, move right, right? Then I need to repeat this 4 again because I need to move diagonally. Remember, we need to also move diagonally. So up again. Then I need to update my code. So let me check in what order did I write them. Let me just look at my code. That's the order I'm gonna use. I said up, then down, then left. Okay. So up, down. Right. So don't worry about those comments. Let me remove these comments. I'll leave only one of them so that you understand what a switch statement does or what it means. Let me delete this. Right. So let me continue updating. So move down. This is move left. This is move right. It doesn't matter in what order you put it. Don't cram order. Don't do that. Students love cramming. It's like you love making your lives difficult. Don't cram. There's no need to cram here. Move up and right. Then we have move down and up. No, down and left. What am I saying? Down and left. Then move down and right. Right. Then now, how do we move up? Remember the formula. That's why I always write formulas, me. But then I know them in my head now because I've experienced this thing. I've also been tutoring it for a few years. So I have experience. I know it from my head. I can find the coordinates in my head. So let's start by moving up. We said that the formula is row minus 1 and column remains the same. So that means the only thing that I'm updating is the row of my current variable. Remember that we initialize the destination variables to point to the current row and the current column. So I just simply update my destination variables. So to move up, I simply decrement the row by 1. So it's simply doing this minus minus, right? Remember this just minus minus just basically means its destination row is equals destination row minus 1. But remember we initialize destination row to current. So in other words, like it's current minus 1. But it's the longer way of doing it. C purpose knows. You don't have to explain anything. C purpose knows. If you are able to make your instructions clear, it knows. So to move up, I simply decrement my row by 1. Then to move down, right, you're moving down, you simply increment the row by 1. Trust me, I know this thing, so you can just simply double check. That's why I'm saying I'm gonna create the PDF for this, for the notes that I've written inside Notepad++, so that you can picture and try to understand why am I adding only the destination row? Why am I incrementing or decrementing only the destination row? And I did explain it how I go to that conclusion. So you shouldn't have any issues to why I'm doing this. So to move left, that means I need to decrease my column. So that's destination call minus minus. Then to move right, if you're at maths major, your major is comp sci and maths or comp sci and stats. But comp sci, yeah, comp sci and stats, yeah. You shouldn't have any issues here because you know maths. This should be like you'd be like, this is easy stuff. So yeah, I don't have, there's not too much to explain there. To move right, it's incrementing the column, right? Then now when you move up and left and right, think about it. To move up, what's the code to move up? What's the code to move left? That's what they mean by move up and left. So you do two movements or you update two variables. What's the coordinate? What's the formula to move up? It's destination row minus minus. So I'm gonna put that here. Then what's the one to move left? I look for it. It's destination column minus minus. So that's how they got to that. That's how they get to that conclusion. What I'm going to advise you to do, right? Don't leave curly braces before placing the statements in each case. Why? Because I've noticed a pattern about switch statements, right? If you have one line, it runs, it works. If you have more than one line, it actually expects you to have curly braces. So in my for you, right, I would advise you to simply place everything inside curly braces. So right before the break, you need to put curly braces. Then you put your code. I would advise you to do it like that, or else you're gonna have problems with compilation. Remember, C++ it doesn't give you clear errors. You can spend the whole day trying to decide to fix your debug your code. Yeah, so you need to be very careful. Curly braces, you need to put this. See, these curly braces, they'll make your code not to compile. So make sure you put them. Even I remember I told you that you only put them when you have one or two or more. Even when there's one, why am I doing that? So that you don't forget it. If you're good at remembering, it's fine. You can mix it up. C++ on mind. Basically, some cases you don't put the curly brace. Some cases you do. It does. C++ doesn't mind. I'm just doing it for your case so that you guys don't struggle when you forget to forget and so that you don't forget this thing. But sometimes you can really forget. So yeah, to move up and left. To move up, we know it's this part, right? This is to move up. No, up and right, I mean. And then now I need to go for move right. There's move right. I need to copy that, put it under here. So move up and move right. So it means you need to move up first, which is this. Then move right, which is this. And then move down and left. So we need to the code for move down and move left. So let's start with down. So this is the code for down to move down. Since I'm gonna move down on both, so I'm just gonna put it there for both to save time. Then down and left. So this is left here. It's up to you. You can go back at the top. You see, there's left, exactly the same. I'm simply using my brain and not having to go scroll up too much. Move down and right. I know I found the right somewhere. There's the right here. Then yeah, and then you're almost done, right? Almost. Right. So here I need to actually this way you actually move the feature. It can be a player. In this case, we don't have a player, we have an operator. So we are moving an operator. That's why I just simply call it play, move the feature. It can be any feature. But before we move the player, right, or the feature, we need to find, remember, you see this adding, right? Let me show you why this is a problem if I don't check. I need to check, excuse me, I need to check if the coordinates are still within the world. Why? So that you don't leave the world. So for example, when you're at the edge here, if I keep an incrementing column, remember this is column, it's gonna disappear. The character is gonna disappear. It's gonna go out of the game. So I want to avoid that. So I need to check if the coordinate that I want to point to exists, meaning it points to some feature, right? We call this we call this by checking if it's in if it's in the game, right? We call that function is in world. We check if it's in the world, right? So I'm gonna call it is in world. So I'm gonna declare it anyway. Remember, it does not need to be in the call used by the user. So I'm not gonna declare it in the header file. So I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna remember the terminology I'm using is in world. That means it's gonna return a boolean, true or false. So bool is in world or in full, right? We're basically checking if a feature, not a feature, man, a coordinate is in world, but we don't remember coordinate is a noun. Functions are named with verbs. So is, to be honest, is wouldn't be let me see. It wouldn't be a verb. Because functions they mainly use verbs. As you can see, move operator. It needs to start, even if it has a noun, it needs to start with the, at most it needs to start with the verb. So let me think of what to name this function in terms of verbs. So yeah, okay. Except, oh yeah, I remember. Except for functions that return Boolean. You see, functions that return Boolean, they don't start with the verb. They can start with the noun, that's fine. But they need to start with the word, for example, is, has. For example, if a game has has a feature, you can say has feature. If a coordinate is in world, so you're gonna call the method is in world. So Boolean is a bit unique in that sense. So I'm gonna say is in world, which basically checks if my coordinate is in my world. So I obviously take in the game, the 2D array, because that represents my game world, right? And then do that. And then what am I checking? What do I need to check? I need to check in the coordinates. So I need to actually pass in those coordinates because I can't check if I can pass them, right? So I must pass the coordinates. So const int the row and then const int the column. How do you check? Basically, remember even though this function doesn't say so, the row represents destination row. The column represents destination column, where we are currently trying to go to, so that we don't try to go outside of the world. How do we check if it's still valid? It's valid if that row that we've found, that we've generated, is in between the range of my rows, right? Remember the diagram that we have. Each this starts from counting from 0. So 0 up until 5. So that means if I keep adding 1 to call, and column eventually becomes column 6. What is C++ shouldn't allow me to index because there's no column 6. So that's what we're trying to avoid. How do you avoid that? That means that the column needs to be exactly greater than or equals to 0, but less than or equals to 5. How do you find 5? Remember the last code, last index. We had a session on that. We said last index is always the size. Let me not actually say columns. Let me say the size, which is the size can be anything, columns or rows. So size minus 1. That's how you find the last index. So that means the rows and columns they need to be within this range, and both of them. If you remember logic, it's both of them. And this function can return true or false. I can simply return it. I don't have to put it in a separate variable. I can just simply return my row, check if my row starts at least 0, and my row is less than or equals to rows. Listen, look at you see, like I said, computers they want perfection, a perfectionist. If you for some weird reason you said rows is less than or equals to row, C++ doesn't know that you made an error. It will try to run it and it crashes and then says, I don't know, something went wrong. You figure it out. So that's why it's very important to practice every day. ComSci is basically maths. I'm going to teach you a trick. It's maths. That's the secret. And maths, don't you practice it every day? Exactly. So if the lesser you practice, the more you forget. Even me, I've noticed if I go maybe for like a month without doing C++, I forget it. I start to forget it. That's a problem because comp sci is like maths and it's based on maths. it's called computer science, right? Because what? It applies science in computers. So this is your physics, what is this? Electromagnetic waves, all those things. Electromagnetic waves actually applied in Wi-Fi. If you're either measuring in ComSci or doing ComSci 2A next year as an elective, you will learn about it in ComSci 2B Wi-Fi. They'll tell you that it uses electromagnetic waves, whatever, and then light rays, something like that. There's physics involved. So computer science is called computer science because it takes science and it applies science in computers. Maths is still science. Because why do I say so? Because don't you use calculus in physics? You use calculus, right? You need to know maths. So if you didn't want maths, to be honest, you shouldn't have chosen comp sci. You should have went to accounting there because comp sci is still maths. So I need both of these conditions to be true, right? So I need this to be true and the condition for the columns. I need both. So therefore, I'm going to use and. So I'm going to say and, then I also copy this and I check for my column. I'll copy this to make my life easier. Paste this. Then I'm going to change this to call to check if that column is within the right range. Come on, less than or equals to calls. And then semicolon, and then you're done. That's how you check if the coordinates are in the game mode. By checking if the row at least is greater than or equals to 0, and that row is less than or equals to rows. And you also check this. Both conditions need to be true because both coordinates need to be correct. Because why do I use and? Because both coordinates need to be correct. Why? Because if both coordinates need to be true, because if the row is correct, let's say the row is correct, it's row 0, but the column is at column 6. So column 6 is incorrect. So both of them need to be correct because why? As you can see, this is what row 0. So row is correct, is valid. Column 5, column is also valid. So both, in order for us to move to a location, both coordinates need to be valid. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that. So that's done. This returns Boolean. Remember, we talked about this. These are what we call relational operators. If you're checking greater than or equals to 0, right? It returns true. I want you, okay, let's view it in terms of logic. You still remember logic, right? Everywhere where there's a symbol like less than or equals to or greater than or less than or equals, it returns a Boolean or true. Or it returns a truth value of either true or false. So after it's done, then it applies logic. What is true and true? It's true. Then the overall answer becomes true. Then what is true and false if there was a false, and so forth. So it's basically maths. If you remember logic, you guys were taught logic in class. I'm basically applying logic here. Then after I'm done here, I need to move the feature, right? But before I move, remember the whole function. Let me remember something. I want you to, it was something very important. Here we put in something that returns a Boolean true or false. But C++ also allows you to pass in integers. We talked about that, right? The function itself returns a Boolean. So I can simply just pass in the function itself. So I can say if is in world, and let's try to pass the function there. Why? Because the function returns bool, which is true or false. Then I pass in my game mode, right, and my size, which is rows, calls, and then I pass in my row, which is the destination row. So it's going to be destination row, and then the destination call, right? I think is there something else? Oh, it's done. Let me check. I think it's done, right? Let me check the function is involved, and yeah, it's done. The last two parameters is the destination row and destination column. Then I go here, right, and then I put in my curly braces, right? Then that means that this coordinate, right, destination row, destination column, it's valid. So if it is valid, right, meaning my destination location, that's row and column, is valid or is in the world. It's not outside of the world. If it is, then now I can move the game, the feature, right? Which is the operate. Let me show you. Remember we wrote the code. There it is here. You see? There it is. This is how you do the movement. We talked about that. So I'm just going to simply copy it here. Array name just means the name of the array. Our array name is game mode, so I need to change that part. I need to change this to game mode, right? But then after moving here, that's when you're going to do update. After moving, we need to check what are we moving into, or before moving. Yeah, we need to check before moving. You see, we need to before moving. We check basically what is it that destination where we're trying to go. What is there? If there's a torch, we light it. Something like that. This will be where the update functionality goes, right? Right before you do the movement. But for now, I'll just show you the movement. For now, even if I run into, oh no, we haven't done movement. No, my bad. I didn't ask the user for options. So let's get those options. And I want you to understand something. The options, they come after what? Displaying the game, right? So I need to go to the function that displays the game. Remember, we use the function for that, which is display world. I think it's called display world. Let's go up. Yeah, there's display world. So after, yeah, I even put a comment. This way you display the movements. So here I can display the movement. Remember, there's a lot of movements. I'm going to, don't do this, ne? Don't try this at home. I'm just putting it here, but don't try this at home, right? What I'm about to do here, don't do spiritual things, right? You don't have experience. Me, I have experience. I can find any error. Don't do what I'm about to do. You have to type everything from scratch. So I'm gonna say see out, then I'm gonna say move up. Right? Because I want to, you might forget whether this is move up or move down, what comes after move up. Because I wanted to maintain that same structure, right? So this is to move up. Let's choose the symbols. You have to choose symbols on the keyboard, which what means to move up. For my gamers out there, I know you use the up arrows in the on the keyboard. No, that's too advanced. You can do that when you get to ComSci 2A, which is Java. You can learn about that. But here we are doing they're doing console applications, so they run via the terminal. I'll use a W to move up, and then don't forget the backslash n, right, to move to the next line. Then I'll simply copy this, right? Yeah, you see, I'm a pro at editing this thing, so don't be like me and think you can edit like me. Type everything from scratch. Okay. Let me put this. Yeah, you must type everything from scratch. Don't be like me. Me, I have experience. You see, look at how easy I'm gonna change this. Then change that. Um, change this. That. 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 Right. So this is the option. So let's choose the symbols. So to move up is W. To move down, hey, this thing is trick. Let me use S. Or you can do this, right? It's up to you. Down and left. Nah. You can use for example, up starts with U. So basically use U to move up, but that's gonna be kind of complicated. Let me not use that technique. So let me say S and then let me think about it. To be honest, that can be fine. Yeah. To move left, you just type in L. To move right, you just type in R. And then to move up and right, maybe that's when you use W, all those other symbols. So let me do it that way. I'm gonna do it my own way, right? Your lecturers might not do this way. It doesn't mean, I'm gonna repeat this, right? It doesn't mean the way I do my code, you must do it that same way. I do it my own way. Dr. Stungu does it in his own way. Prof. Kuta does it in his own way. You do it in your own way. Don't be like, Dr. Stung uses W, S, and D, and A, and Q. I also use the same. No. Learn to be original. Come up with your own symbols. So unless if in the question paper, in this case, it's a past paper, so they didn't show you. In your practical, they told you, use those symbols that are shown in the example, in that image that they put there. Those are the exact letters they want you to use. Remember, you guys are still on practicals, not semester test 2. But when you write the semester test 2, you can use any symbols. So to move left, I'm just going to use L. To move right, I'm just going to use R. To move up, and hey, see now this becomes tricky when you to move. Yeah, it's fine. I'll just put W there, S, and then A, and then the last one, move up and right. I'll just use Q. It's really annoying when you come up with these things. I don't like it. You have to think about what to name. Hey. Then after here, we can simply do this, right? You don't have to do this, right? What I'm about to do right now, you don't have to. I just want to make my game look pretty. I'm just gonna say this, right? I'm just gonna do that to make my game look pretty. Let me show you how it looks so far. So I'm gonna build and run. Yeah, so you see there's my movements. Then after those lines, right? You could also put lines here at the top. You see here to divide. It's up to you. You could do that. For example, here before I display this, but after the end line, I do that. You can play around with it. That's up to you. But then you see that it becomes more and more beautiful the more you put in effort. So you see, there it is there. Then after this, right, after displaying this, I can output a string that says enter choice, right? So enter your choice. And then you remember when you're getting input, you don't what is this? You don't put in backslash n, or else it's gonna move the cursor to the next line and things like that. Yeah. So I'll just leave it here. I think we should end our session here. And the next session we'll do our main and then get input. So here you see that there's the enter choice. So in our next tutorial, I need to get the input right from here. The user should enter something here, the movement. I also forgot X to exit. I forgot that option. I need to put it. Yeah, I think this one you have to use a smaller size so that you can actually test out all those movements because, hey, there's quite a lot of options. Is to exit. So let's make it a smaller size. Let me go back here and actually make it 10 by 10. So 10 rows and 10 columns. Build and run. So it's a bit smaller so that you can see. Yeah, I see it's a bit better now. Then we can try to move the operator, blah, blah. Yeah, it's a bit better now. It's fine. You don't have to make it too big because there's a lot of movement options a lot of options for you, the user to enter in order to move. So yeah, that's it for today. I'll zip and send you the code, but I don't see why I should be sending the code piece by piece, but it's fine. I'll send it. So see you in tomorrow's tutorial. Have a lovely evening.